The old scars burned whenever Karin dreamt of the moon called Asphodel. It was a gray stone world, windless, bitter, its soil poisoned by plasma fire. He remembered the smell of scorched iron and the sound of human screams echoing through his helmet. 30 years hadn't dulled the memory. No soldier forgot the day he first met a Terran. They'd been told the natives were backward animals with crude rifles and no concept of surrender. By nightfall, half his platoon was dead. The humans didn't fight like any species he'd known, they fought like fire trapped in flesh, using their own dying bodies as weapons. One of them had crawled toward Karin after a grenade tore through his squad, a gaping wound where his arm should have been. Instead of finishing him, the man had pressed a medkit against Karin's chest and whispered, "Don't die like us." Then he bled out under the twin moons. Karin had never forgiven himself for surviving. The lift doors hissed open, and Karin stepped into the obsidian hall of the Imperial Council of Steel. His limp echoed in the silence. Rows of alien delegates sat like marble statues, their eyes reflecting the glow of the galaxy projected in the center, a shimmering holographic sphere with one small blue dot pulsing in its outer arm. Earth. He paused at the podium, the light catching on the dull metal of his prosthetic arm. The guard's antennae twitched at the faint whine of servos. "You summoned me," he rasped, voice gravel-edged. From her throne of glass and steel, Grand Strategos Valira Dnal tilted her head, feathers glinting sapphire under the lights. "We did. The Council requires your testimony regarding the Terran species." Karin's eyes flicked across the chamber, skeptical faces, thin smiles. He knew the tone before she spoke it, the amusement of bureaucrats dissecting ghosts. "They're not what you think," he said. "You've seen their transmissions, wars, poverty, division, but you don't see the pattern. Every time they break themselves, they rise sharper. They evolve through ruin." A crystalline laugh rang out from a merchant delegate. "Evolve? They still burn oil." Karin ignored it. "When we fought them on Asphodel, they had no chance. They fought anyway. Not for empire. Not for wealth. For each other." Valira's voice cut through him like a blade. "Are you implying, Sergeant, that this feral species poses a threat to the Galactic Empire?" "I'm saying your empire has never fought anyone who doesn't know fear," the chamber murmured. A cold smile touched her beak. "Then enlighten us, veteran. What should we fear? Their primitive missiles? Their unshielded craft?" Karin leaned forward, every word deliberate. "Fear their refusal to lose." The council erupted in low laughter. He felt the heat rise under his scales but didn't flinch. "You think they're animals because they bleed faster. You think numbers and drones win wars. But they adapt in ways machines can't calculate. They make chaos a weapon." Valira stood, tall and gleaming. "You are dismissed, Sergeant Voss. The Empire thanks you for your colorful recollections." Her eyes flashed, the same cold blue as the bombardments he remembered. He bowed stiffly, turned, and limped toward the exit as the council resumed its chatter. Their voices blurred into a droning hum about assimilation protocols and resource yields. He stopped at the doorway. "When they come for you," he said without turning, "remember this moment." The hall went silent. Later, in the empty corridors of Aurelius Prime, Karin drifted past rows of glass windows overlooking the curve of the desert planet below. Transports shimmered in orbit, preparing for departure. The Empire moved like a machine, efficient, tireless, without doubt. He stopped at a viewport. Earth hung in the distance, a tiny marble adrift in darkness. The clouds swirled white, the oceans glimmered. He remembered the human medic's hand on his chest, the faint tremor before death. "Don't die like us." The words had outlived the man who spoke them. Behind him, a voice cut the silence. "Still haunted by ghosts, old lizard?" Karin turned. It was Lieutenant Saren, a young avian officer with a polished crest and a smirk too sharp for his own safety. "Watching the target," Karin said. Saren folded his wings. "They're primitives, Voss. The fleet will have them pacified before week's end. You've seen their broadcasts, savage tribes pretending at civilization. Karin's jaw tightened. That's what we said last time. The lieutenant's eyes glinted with mock sympathy. You've been drinking again. Karin brushed past him without reply. His gait was slow but deliberate, each metallic footstep a quiet defiance. In the officers' lounge, the holoscreens broadcast propaganda from the Imperial Bureau of Conquest, images of Terran cities labeled as targets of opportunity. Maps painted in red arcs and victory projections. Laughter filled the air. Karin poured himself a glass of fermented brine and sat apart, staring into the liquid. Around him, the younger soldiers swapped boasts about who would claim the first Terran kill. He'd once sounded like them. Before he learned what it meant to fight something that refused to die quietly. He rose, finished the drink, and made his way to his quarters. Inside, relics from his service cluttered the desk, a rusted Terran dog tag, his medal for valor, and a cracked photoplate showing his old unit, smiling before Asphodel. All dead now. He touched the tag, traced the faded engraving, Corporal James Ryder. The human who saved him. He opened his log recorder. Entry 73. They're making the same mistake again. Empire arrogance, blinding, endless. They believe numbers win wars. I've seen the truth. It's not numbers. It's will. When this begins, the blood won't stop at Earth. He paused. And when it ends, either side will be the same. He sent the message into a private archive, buried, forgotten, just like his warnings. Hours later, the announcement echoed through the fortress. Operation Dawnfire authorized. All fleet divisions prepare for deployment. The corridors pulsed with sirens and the thrum of engines. Karin watched from the observation deck as squadrons of dreadnoughts aligned into formation, their ion trails painting the void in blue fire. Valira's flagship, Imperatrix, gleamed like a shard of ice. He clenched his metallic hand until the servos creaked. Saren passed by again, grinning. It begins, old soldier. We'll bring civilization to that mud ball. Karin didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the pale blue world receding into darkness. The ships glided forward like silver blades, slicing toward destiny. He whispered, almost to himself, You don't bring civilization to fire. You only feed it. When the last of the fleet vanished into the black, Karin remained alone at the viewport, the reflections of warships fading across his face. Somewhere below, on the surface of Varlis IV, the storm winds began to rise. He watched them swirl, thinking of oceans, thunder, and defiance, the kind humans carried in their veins. Let it come, he murmured. They'll learn. One way or another. He turned away, the echo of his footsteps fading into the hum of the station's engines. Behind him, in the darkness, Earth's image flickered on the glass for a heartbeat longer, then went dark. The first reports came within hours of the invasion, fragmented transmissions, static-laced distress calls, confused coordinates. Karin stood in the dim light of Aurelius Prime's war room, watching a wall of holograms flicker between calm command feeds and chaotic Mayday signals. Operation Dawnfire proceeding on schedule, droned the AI narrator. Resistance minimal. Civilian surrender, pending. But beneath the calm data streams, Karin saw the cracks forming. Human channels weren't silent. They screamed with coded bursts, interference that didn't match any pattern in the Empire's database. The screens flickered, noise, then a human voice snarled through the static. This is Earth Command. You've picked the wrong planet. A nervous officer muted the feed. Karin muttered. It begins. From the viewing deck, Earth burned, plumes of light in the stratosphere where orbital bombardments had cut into power grids and military bases. On the surface, cities fell dark. Valira stood tall before the glowing map, her feathers immaculate even in the red light. Our victory is inevitable, she declared. Their infrastructure collapses faster than projected. Within a cycle, we'll claim the planet. Karin approached quietly. Collapse isn't victory. You've seen nothing yet. Her 4 eyes turned cold and perfect. You presume too much. I presume reality, he said. You think they'll surrender because you shattered their cities. They don't surrender. They improvise. They turn ruins into weapons. Spoken like a sentimental fossil. He met her gaze. You'll regret ignoring fossils when the ground cracks beneath you. Valira turned back to her officers. Dismiss the relic. Karin left without another word. The alarms hummed softly above, and through the viewport, fires on Earth pulsed like heartbeat rhythms. 3 days later, the surrender that the Empire expected turned into chaos. Human counterstrikes erupted across 4 continents. Guerrilla units ambushed landing craft using rooftops and subway tunnels. Drones reprogrammed from civilian factories dropped explosive charges onto Imperial patrols. On the communication feeds, AI command chains began collapsing, jammed by something simple yet devastating: human unpredictability. They changed frequencies mid-battle, spoofed Imperial signals, and hijacked drone fleets with improvised algorithms. One by one, Imperial ships vanished from the command grid. In the war room, officers shouted over the alarms. Admiral, our ground troops are being lured into uninhabited sectors, then ambushed. Valira's voice cut through the noise. Deploy orbital scans. Already done, strategos. They've painted false signatures, entire cities that don't exist. Karin stepped from the shadows. They're using you against yourself. Your logic relies on order, they thrive in disorder. Her feathers bristled. You again. Because you keep proving me right. Careful, veteran. Treason echoes louder than truth. Karin's stare didn't waver. Then maybe you should listen harder. He returned to his quarters that night, exhaustion pulling at his bones. The silence there was heavier than battle. From his console, he opened a secure channel, an old code from his soldiering days, buried deep in the Empire's forgotten archives. He hesitated, then began typing a sequence. On the surface, it would appear as a personal veteran's memoir upload, harmless nostalgia. But embedded within it were tactical advisories, translated into analog coordinates, the kind humans could decipher. He recorded his voice, steady and low. To whoever finds this, your enemy fights in straight lines. Don't cut their supply chains. Attack their pride. Never fight where they expect you. They'll crumble faster than their ships. He encrypted the file, transmitted it through obsolete relay nodes, and sat back. Forgive me, Ryder, he whispered. Maybe this is how I make it right. 2 weeks later, the galaxy began whispering the same rumor, the Silver Scale, a mysterious insider leaking intelligence to the humans. Valira's response was ruthless. She ordered a purge of all retired veterans from the Outer Rim campaigns. Entire files disappeared overnight. Those who questioned her vanished. Karin knew the net was tightening. He packed only what mattered: the dog tag, a plasma sidearm, and a single data crystal containing proof of her crimes. He tried leaving the station through the lower hangars, blending with cargo traffic. The sirens flared before he reached the bay. Sergeant Karin Voss! The mechanical voice echoed through the corridor. By order of Grand Strategos Null, you are under arrest for espionage. Karin turned slowly, eyes narrowing. 2 armored guards advanced, rifles raised. He said quietly, You should have sent more. The fight lasted seconds. A blinding pulse. His prosthetic arm split the first guard's helmet. The second fell under a stun charge. Karin limped into the shadows as alarms blared across the decks. The next day, Valira addressed the fleet from the command spire, her voice transmitted through every ship. Human resistance is intensifying. They've acquired Imperial technology, proof of a traitor among us. The Silver Scale will be found and purged. Until then, escalation is authorized. Karin, hidden in the lower levels, watched from a maintenance corridor. His face was lit by the flickering screen of her speech. Escalation. That meant mass sterilization strikes, orbital firestorms. Billions of civilians. He couldn't stay silent. He broke into an auxiliary command console, rerouted communications through old Tsar encryption, and transmitted a message to the human resistance leader, codenamed Grey Fox. They're going to burn your planet. You have 30 hours. Strike first. The reply came minutes later, a voice rough and human. Understood, Silver Scale. We don't plan on dying quiet. He smiled faintly, the first time in years. When the counteroffensive hit, it came like a phantom storm. Human ships, patched together from stolen Imperial wrecks, jumped into orbit under stealth fields. Cyber viruses swept through the fleet's mainframe. For a moment, every Imperial weapon went dark. Karin stood in the auxiliary deck, watching the chaos unfold. On one screen, Earth's skies filled with resistance craft rising from underground hangars. On another, Imperial destroyers drifted helplessly. A junior officer burst into the hall. Communications down! Systems locked! They're inside our network! Karin muttered. They always were. The humans broadcast their message across every channel. You came to conquer. We came to survive. Let's see who lasts longer. The line cut, leaving a silence heavier than defeat. Valira's fury was volcanic. She gathered the high command in the central dome. You will find the traitor. You will burn him from existence. Her eyes swept the room, and for a heartbeat, Karin thought she'd found him through sheer hatred alone. But her attention turned to her officers instead. Karin slipped away before the meeting ended. He knew what came next: purges, executions, desperation. He'd seen it all before. The Empire would eat itself before admitting failure. He climbed through maintenance shafts, feeling every ache in his body. Below him, the planet's shadow moved across the stars. He reached a small observation hatch and gazed down at Earth, now alive with the glow of resistance fires, like constellations blooming from the ground. He whispered, "You stubborn bastards! You're doing it!" Then he heard the distant hum of approaching drones. He tapped his comm implant. Silver Scale to Grey Fox. They'll hit Aurelius Prime next. That's where she hides. End it there. Copy, came the reply. You've done enough, old soldier. Not yet, Karin said. Not until she learns. He cut the line, watching the streaks of light as captured Imperial ships broke orbit and turned toward Aurelius Prime. For the first time in his life, Karin smiled without regret. The war he had warned them about was no longer coming. It was here. The alarms started before dawn shift. Aurelius Prime trembled under the weight of explosions, each blast closer than the last. Karin woke to the metallic scream of hull plating buckling, his quarters shaking with the echo of impact. Outside, red lights flickered through the corridor haze. The humans had come. He strapped on his combat harness, the servos in his mechanical arm humming as he tightened the grip of his plasma pistol. Through the bulkhead window, he saw streaks of fire cutting across the void, human ships diving through the defensive grid like meteors, fearless and erratic. They learned, he muttered. By the stars, they learned. A broadcast flared across the internal comms. This is Grand Strategos Null. All units to defense positions. The Terran fleet will not breach this station. The transmission crackled out under static and the deep rumble of another explosion. Karin stepped into the corridor. Soldiers ran past in confusion, orders clashing, chain of command fracturing. The Empire's perfect machine was breaking apart. He followed the tremors toward the command spire, using maintenance routes few remembered. Each intersection was littered with bodies, Zarian, avian, and machine alike. By the time he reached the upper decks, the station's glass corridors had turned into death traps. Shards of light spilled through cracks in the bulkhead, exposing space beyond. Human boarding pods slammed into the walls like thunder, tearing through defenses. Karin ducked behind a console as one pod broke open ahead of him. Smoke poured out, followed by armored silhouettes. Terran Marines, scarred, grim, efficient. Their rifles barked blue fire. He recognized their coordination, that same relentless rhythm he'd faced on Asphodel. One of them spotted him, weapon raised. For a heartbeat, both froze, one alien, one human, each seeing in the other the ghost of old wars. Karin lowered his weapon first. Go, he rasped. The Strategos is ahead. End this. The Marine hesitated, then nodded once and moved on. Karin exhaled, relief mixing with sorrow. The command hall loomed at the station's heart, an enormous dome of glass and metal, now shuddering under bombardment. The great holographic map of Earth flickered, replaced by static. Valira stood at its center, feathers disheveled but eyes still burning with the same arrogant brilliance. "Sergeant Voss," she said as he entered, her voice cutting through the noise. "So it was you. The traitor." Karin limped forward, unarmed now, his plasma pistol tossed aside. "I warned you what they were. You warned me to fear primitives." Her tone dripped with disdain. "And now you aid them? You, a soldier of the Empire?" He stopped a few steps from her, the floor trembling beneath. "I served an empire that forgot what it means to fight for something real. They fight for survival. For one another. You'll never understand that." She gestured sharply to her guards, but none moved. Most were dead. The few remaining stared at her, uncertain. The walls shook again, distant explosions echoing through the spire. "Do you think they'll spare you?" she hissed. "You're an abomination to them. They'll remember the ones who tried to stop this madness." He looked around the hall. "This empire of perfection, you built it on arrogance and fear. It dies today." Valira's feathers bristled, her voice rising over the quake. "Then we die as gods!" She slammed her palm onto the control panel, initiating the self-destruct. Warning sirens wailed. Karin lunged forward, driving his mechanical arm through the console, sparks bursting in every direction. System screamed in protest as he forced the override. Valira struck him across the face, claws slicing deep into his scales. "You dare defy!" He grabbed her wrist mid-swing, the servos in his prosthetic hand locking. "You never listened. You never learned." He hurled her backward. She crashed into the command dais, coughing blood, eyes wide with disbelief. Through the shattered dome above, he saw human frigates closing in, docking claws extended, boarding lights flashing like crimson stars. Valira crawled toward a fallen sidearm, her breath ragged. "You think they'll bring peace? They'll become us." Karin shook his head. "Maybe. But they'll remember what we forgot." He stepped to the main terminal, his fingers flying across the controls. He rerouted power from the defense grid to the life support corridors, unlocking the hangar bays. "They'll need air to save who's left." Valira's weapon rose shakily behind him. "Traitor!" The plasma bolt struck his shoulder, spinning him around. Pain surged through the prosthetic joint, but he didn't fall. He leveled his gaze on her, steady, defiant. "I'm a soldier," he said quietly. "Not yours anymore." He fired once. The blast caught her square in the chest. She staggered, wings flaring briefly, then collapsed beside the flickering hologram of Earth. Her final breath came as a whisper. "Perfection endures." Karin holstered his weapon, breathing hard. "Not this kind." The floor quaked violently. The reactor core was overheating, damage from the bombardment spreading through the station's veins. Karin limped toward the central command node, keying in the last override. Over comms, a human voice cut through the static. "Aurelius Prime Control, this is Captain Mora, Terran Fleet. Identify yourself." Karin smiled faintly. "You won't believe me. We're reading a life signal in the spire. Do you need extraction?" "Negative," he said. "You need distance. Reactor's gone." "Who is this?" "Doesn't matter." He paused. "Don't make our mistakes. Win, and be better." The line went silent for a moment. Then the voice returned, softer. "We will." He closed the channel. The hall groaned around him, light flaring white as the core containment ruptured. He staggered toward the shattered dome and looked down on the planet below, Varley's 4 turning slowly in the void, beautiful and indifferent. He thought of the human medic on Asphodel, of the words whispered between enemies, "Don't die like us." "Too late," Karin murmured, smiling through the blood on his lips. "But maybe you won't have to." The explosion took him before the next breath. When the blast reached orbit, it lit the darkness like a sunrise. The Imperial flagship disintegrated, its fragments scattering across the stars. The surviving human fleet pulled back, engines cutting through the debris field. In the quiet aftermath, only silence remained, no empire, no orders, just the soft hum of victory earned at impossible cost. Years later, on the lush plains of New Geneva, beneath twin suns, a monument stood taller than the council chambers that once ruled the stars. Two figures of stone, one human, one alien, stood side by side, weapons lowered. Between them, an inscription read. He tried to warn them. We listened. Children played in the meadow below, their laughter echoing through the valley. Among them walked a young cadet, her scales faintly silver beneath warm skin, a hybrid born of two worlds once divided by fire. She paused before the statue, tracing the carved inscription with her fingers. Sergeant Karin Voss, she whispered, reading the name aloud. Her instructor called from behind. Cadet Aaron, time for drills. She turned, the sunlight catching in her bright eyes. Coming, sir. Then, glancing once more at the statue, she added softly, We'll make you proud. As she walked away, a breeze swept across the memorial. The silver figure seemed almost alive in the light, his gaze fixed forever on the stars. Beyond the horizon, the new Alliance fleet lifted into orbit, not for conquest, but for exploration. And in the silence between worlds, Karin's last words lingered, carried through memory and myth alike. Perfection dies. Evolution lives.